This story is brought to you by Sefdom AI, where every tale whispers mystery, stirs the soul, and opens your eyes to the unseen. In a quiet town where faith ruled the hearts of many, a charismatic preacher rose to power. Known for his godly virtues, charity, and love for children, he preached about faith and virtue. But behind the captivating sermons and fire-filled crusades, a storm was brewing, one that blurred the lines between divine assignment and dark allegiance. He wasn't just a pastor, he had a dual calling, and what he did next will shock you. Stay tuned as we unveil the chilling journey of secrets, sacrifices, and a covenant that turned the altar into a battlefield. His name was Pastor Odu, a man whose voice could shake walls and whose eyes glowed with an intensity that left even the most hardened atheist trembling. They called him God's mouthpiece, and his church, Mountain of the Flaming Sword, was known for miracles that defied logic. Wheelchairs abandoned, wombs opened, contracts landed, but all came at a cost no one could see. Pastor Odu wasn't always powerful. Once a struggling evangelist mocked in street corners, he vanished for 6 months and returned with a fire no one could explain. What no one knew was that beneath the anointing oil on his hands, ancient marine symbols were etched, proof of a covenant with spirits deeper than the ocean. The church grew, and so did his appetite. It wasn't enough to heal, he wanted control. To seal his place in the spiritual hierarchy, he entered a secret covenant with a marine entity named Olokunzu, Queen of the Deep. The price: women's sanity and children's lives. He was instructed to sleep with mad women under bridges, and to spiritually sacrifice newborns dedicated at the altar. A pounding pestle and mortar would appear to him in his dreams. Each strike was a death. Each baby's cry was silence purchased. The testimonies increased, but so did the funerals. Within 3 months, 12 families who dedicated babies lost them. Doctors were puzzled. Mothers wailed. The pastor would weep too publicly, saying the enemy was fighting back. But at night, Pastor Odu was not asleep. He was at the riverbank, half naked, chanting incantations with 7 candles circling his waist, and 1 child's name on his tongue. By morning, he was back in suit and tie, giving hope and collecting offerings. His marine bride arrived. She came as a chorister, light-skinned, soft-voiced, and always barefoot. The church called her Sister Muna, but Pastor Odu knew her as Ezenwani, the Lady of the Waters. She didn't eat food. She only drank water laced with blue powder. During worship, whenever she led, strange things happened. A woman once levitated. A pregnant woman began to prophesy in a man's voice. A child screamed, "She has a tail!" before collapsing. Sister Muna simply smiled and kept singing. A young man named Caleb, one of the protocol officers, began to suspect foul play. His dreams turned bloody. He saw babies crying in cages, and Pastor Odu pounding something with a pestle in a cave. Caleb tried to confront him but was struck dumb for a week. Undeterred, Caleb traveled to a remote village in Cross River to meet a seer. The old man confirmed his fears. "Your pastor is not just a man. He dines with serpents and bathes in destinies. You must be wise." The seer gave Caleb a spiritual compass and anointing oil blackened by age. "Do not confront him in the day. You must go to the church alone at midnight and pour this oil under the altar," the old man warned. Caleb, trembling but determined, returned to the city. That night, Caleb slipped into the sanctuary. The building groaned, the altar hissed, but he poured the oil. Suddenly, a loud screech echoed from the pulpit, and Sister Muna appeared, eyes glowing blue. She whispered, "You've seen too much." For 7 days, Caleb was bedridden. He vomited feathers and sand. The doctors were clueless. Meanwhile, Pastor Odu called for a 70-day fast, warning the congregation that a great battle was underway. He claimed demons were attacking from within. But the truth was different. The marine altar was angry. The oil had broken a seal. The pestle no longer obeyed Odu in dreams. His power began to falter. His prophecies became vague. He started seeing snakes coiled in every mirror. One of the mad women he had once used was found preaching at the market, declaring, "The lion shall eat the vulture, the river shall vomit its priest." Pastor Odu heard of it and grew uneasy. He sent men to silence her, but they never returned. Meanwhile, children in church began to act strange. One child told his mother, "Daddy Odu wears snakeskin when nobody's watching." Another child, during Sunday school, painted a drawing of Odu standing in fire surrounded by babies. Church members started having terrible nightmares. The offering baskets caught fire twice. One usher collapsed during tithes and said she saw
Sister
babies
Muna
stopped
crying
attending
inside the
services, claiming the realm had closed its gate. Odu's enemies were not physical. Even his shadows started hissing. He could no longer step into the baptismal pool. Water turned red around him. When he tried to preach deliverance, thunder struck the roof. Caleb returned, this time armed with a team of intercessors. They came to the church at 3 a.m., carrying ashes from children's graves and an old tambourine from a sanctified prophet. As they began to pray, chains broke in the spirit. Suddenly, the altar cracked. From beneath it, a hand covered in scales tried to pull Caleb under, but he shouted, "The Lord rebuke you, serpent priest." Fire fell. And for the first time, Odu screamed in fear, not power. At dawn, news spread that the altar had collapsed overnight. Odu stood before the church, pale and shaking, blaming witches in the congregation. "Someone is feeding demons among us," he roared. The people clapped, unaware it was him. But behind his eyes, chaos raged. That night, Olokunzu appeared to him, furious. "You broke the pact," she hissed. "You let the oil of another kingdom touch my throne. You shall pay in blood." As Nwanyi Sister Muna returned, not to sing but to warn. She walked into Odu's office, eyes hollow, voice low. "I am sent to retrieve what belongs to the deep, your soul, your seat, and your son." Odu had no son, or so he thought. Then he remembered the child born after a night with a woman he never married, a child he denied. That child would now be the price. Caleb gathered the remnants of the intercessory team and they entered a 21-day fast. On the 7th day, a trumpet sound echoed from nowhere at midnight. The church ground trembled. All the fans in the auditorium spun in reverse direction. A scroll appeared in Caleb's dream. It had names written in blood. Odu's was first. Muna's was second. The rest were names of children who died. Then a voice thundered, "The harvest of pain is near." In the physical, Odu began to bleed from his nose and ears while preaching. He coughed feathers. The pulpit cracked again. He ordered 7 deliverance services, but each one ended in confusion. One night, he tried to enter the marine realm to plead with Olokunzu, but the water turned to smoke. He found himself on a rock, surrounded by crying babies with no faces. They began to crawl toward him, chanting, "Papa! Papa!" Sister Muna collapsed on a Wednesday. Her body turned stiff. When taken to the hospital, the doctors couldn't explain why water kept leaking from her skin. She mumbled, "He is forsaken. The ocean has vomited him." The church elders called for a traditional priest in secret. He told them, "Your leader is beyond exorcism. He must confess and burn his covenant scroll, or the land will rebel." Odu, desperate, fled to his hometown in Benue State, but the land rejected him. Every animal in the compound died within 48 hours. The village stream turned dry. Elders summoned him and demanded answers. Odu confessed partially, claiming enemies planted charms in his church. But one old woman, blind and toothless, pointed at him and said, "You ate our sons to build your throne. Now the throne shall eat you." Back in the city, the church became chaotic. Members fought during service. Instruments played themselves at night. Caleb found a hidden room behind the altar. It was a shrine with jars labeled with names and dates. Inside one jar, he saw his own name. A black liquid boiled within. He ran out, weeping. That night, he anointed his room, but snakes crawled out of his mattress hissing, "You are marked." News broke online. A former church worker leaked a video of Odu speaking an unknown language and shape-shifting during a vigil. The video went viral. Members left in droves. Some fell ill. Some went mad. The national Christian body summoned him. He never appeared. He claimed it was persecution. But secretly, he had started digging a tunnel beneath his office, planning to escape if judgment came. Olokunzu gave one final warning. Return what you've stolen or your bones will decorate the gates of the abyss. Odu tried to sacrifice a goat, but the animal refused to die. He stabbed it 7 times. It stood and stared. In panic he summoned Muna again, but she was now fading. She appeared in vapor, crying, "We are undone, Odu! We are undone!" The final straw came when a toddler walked to the pulpit during a Wednesday Bible study and shouted, "Snake! Snake!" A long shadow slithered down the pulpit wall and disappeared. That night, lightning struck the church. Fire burned only the pulpit and altar. Yet the Bibles on the pews remained untouched. The writing was on the wall. Odu's kingdom was falling. In a desperate bid to salvage his crumbling empire, Pastor Odu announced a 7 nights of divine resurrection. Flyers flooded the streets. Celebrities and politicians were invited. A python emerged from under the podium, meant to distract. People screamed and fled. But the python didn't bite. Was a disaster. It coiled around the cross and hissed, "Your time is up." Social media erupted. Serpent Church trended for days. Bloggers swarmed the church. Pastor Odu went silent. Meanwhile, Sister Muna appeared at Caleb's doorstep with a message. He must descend to ascend. She handed Caleb a seashell. Inside was a map, a riddle, and a key. "This will lead you to the source of the scrolls, the Cave of Tongues," she said, before vanishing in mist. Caleb embarked on a journey guided by the map. He climbed mountains, crossed rivers, and finally arrived at a cave hidden behind a waterfall. Inside, voices whispered secrets in ancient tongues. He found a scroll glowing with light. As he touched it, visions flooded his mind, the origin of Odu's power. The babies taken, the pact sealed in blood and salt. He collapsed in tears. Meanwhile, Odu was losing his mind. He spoke to mirrors, argued with shadows, and once slapped his reflection. He refused to bathe, fearing water would drag him under. He wore snakeskin robes and smeared ash on his face. The church board tried to intervene, but he dismissed them, shouting, "I am the gate. None enters or leaves except by me." In the marine realm, a coup was rising. Lesser spirits blamed Odu for dishonor. Olokunzu stood trial before the Deep Council. Her throne wavered. She was commanded to retrieve the broken scroll or forfeit her power. She appeared before Odu with tears of rage. "You brought shame upon my name. The scroll must be reclaimed." But Odu refused. He said, "I built your altar. You need me." She wept salt and disappeared. Caleb returned with the light scroll and summoned the intercessors. They fasted and prayed. On the 7th night, thunder cracked, and a voice cried, "Let judgment begin." The earth around the church split open slightly. Snakes fled the cracks. The altar began to shake violently. Worship instruments caught fire. Congregants began confessing sins they hadn't remembered committing. A group of children stood up during service, walked to the altar, and began to sing in tongues. They danced, their feet burning with divine fire. As they danced, the demonic jars beneath the altar exploded. Pastor Odu rushed out, screaming, "Stop them! They're opening the gate!" But the children kept dancing. Light burst from the altar, and for a moment, time froze. Everyone saw visions. One woman saw her lost twins smiling. A man saw chains fall off his mind. Caleb saw the scrolls burn. Pastor Odu saw himself naked, afraid, and drowning in a sea of eyes. Then, silence. Odu collapsed. A serpent spirit rose from his shadow and hissed, "He is ours." But fire from above descended and scorched the spirit. Sister Muna, now redeemed, returned one final time. "The veil is torn, but judgment is not yet complete," she said. She handed Caleb a final scroll and said, "You must bury this at the base of the mountain where it all began." They journeyed together. At the mountain, as Caleb dug, the wind howled. A portal opened. Voices of the lost babies echoed. Muna stepped in, waved, and said, "My debt is paid." Then she vanished forever. Pastor Odu was arrested the next day. Authorities uncovered graves, hidden chambers, and blood-soaked garments. The church was shut down. Caleb, now a prophet, started a small fellowship for the broken. They met in a garden. No walls, no altar, only truth. He called it The gathering of light. In prison, Pastor Odu was kept in solitary confinement. Yet, strange things happened in his cell. Guards heard hymns at midnight, even though no one was near. One guard saw him levitate while whispering incantations. Odu scratched the walls with his fingernails, writing symbols only known in ancient marine dialect. Rats gathered around him like disciples. A snake once slithered into his cell and never came out. Outside, Caleb's fellowship began to grow. People hungry for truth flocked in, no flashy pulpits, just raw prayer and testimonies. Miracles returned, not theatrics, but true freedom. One woman possessed since birth was delivered. A crippled man stood. But Caleb warned, "The fire that cleanses also exposes. Don't play with grace." At the Federal Criminal Tribunal, evidence against Odu was overwhelming. Photos, confessions, and jars with remnants of rituals. The presiding judge collapsed after handling a sealed scroll. The court became a war zone. Lights flickered, files vanished, and stenographers fainted. The trial was postponed indefinitely. Journalists called it the cursed case. Olokunzu, disgraced, attempted to rebuild her throne, but the deep council stripped her of power. She roamed the seas, searching for a new vessel. She tried entering a baby born during a thunderstorm, but Caleb had prayed over the child. The spirit screamed and fled. Olokunzu wept beneath the waves. "Even mortals now resist us." Sister Muna, now living as Miriam, opened an orphanage named Waters Redeemed. She rescued children abandoned due to spiritual deformities. She said, "I once gave children to darkness. Now I rescue them." But one night, a child named Ziki drew a picture. It showed Muna chained to a throne of coral. The boy whispered, "They still want you back." Back in prison, Odu began muttering a prophecy. "I shall rise again. I am not done." He refused food for 7 days. When fed by force, the food turned into sand. One night, a crack appeared in his cell wall, oozing salt water. A tentacle reached through and handed him a serpent fang. He grinned. "They still listen." Caleb sensed something was wrong. He went into seclusion for 40 days. On the 21st day, he was visited by an angel in blazing robes who said, "The serpent's tail still slithers. Finish it, or it will regrow." Caleb was instructed to return to the exact cave of tongues with 12 sanctified men and burn the final scroll. Each man represented a lost tribe from the beginning. As they entered the cave, it wailed. Inside were shadows of all the babies lost. The scroll glowed violently. They began to pray, and tongues unknown to earth erupted. Fire filled the cave. Suddenly, Odu screamed in prison. The fang melted in his hands. Snakes burst from his mouth and eyes. He collapsed, convulsing. For the first time, he saw light. Odu was taken to a psychiatric hospital. The doctor said, "This is not madness. It's something ancient." Caleb visited him. Odu wept. "I saw them. The babies. I saw them all. I was wrong." Caleb laid hands and said, "Grace is not deserved. It is given." Light enveloped them both. But in the spirit, Olokunzu screeched in agony, "He cannot be forgiven." Odu died that night. Smiling, he said, "I am free." His body turned cold, but no autopsy could be done. His veins had turned to ash. At Caleb's fellowship, a rainbow appeared as they worshipped. Miriam stood with the children, and one of them sang in a voice too ancient for her age, "The river has dried, the serpent has drowned, light has prevailed." News of Odu's death spread. Some said it was justice. Others whispered it was unfinished business. His grave remained unmarked. Yet, on some nights, people heard hymns and hisses from the soil. One grave digger quit after seeing glowing eyes beneath the ground. Another saw baby footprints dancing over the tombstone. Caleb warned, "No monument shall rise over evil." Miriam began experiencing visions. A girl with silver eyes led her through a forest of mirrors. In one, she saw her old self seductive, cruel, yet weeping. In another, a child version of herself was trapped in a jar. She woke up chanting a language no one taught her. Caleb called a seer who declared, "The sea has marked her. The residue still seeks her return. Meanwhile, Olokunzu gathered the remaining fragments of her power in a crimson pearl. She summoned 3 spirits of vengeance, each born from children sacrificed by Odu. She named them Sorrow, Silence, and Storm. She vowed, "If I can't have a vessel, I'll have a plague." The spirits entered the city quietly, one to schools, another to orphanages, and one to churches. Children began dying mysteriously. No signs of illness, just sleep, then silence. The media called it the whispering death. Caleb wept. The harvest of evil is not yet over. He and 7 others went on a citywide fast. They anointed schools, playgrounds, and even graveyards. At one site, oil began to boil and steam. The spirits hissed in retreat. The crimson pearl was discovered beneath the bed of a child named Dami. She had begun speaking in dual voices, one hers, one not. "We see through you," the voice said. Caleb held her, tears falling. "You are free in Jesus' name." The pearl shattered, and a loud shriek echoed across the skies. Thunder clapped without clouds. Olokunzu attempted to flee, but the deep council bound her with chains of forgotten fire. "You've broken balance," they said. "The blood you took was not yours." They sealed her in a vortex within the Mariana Trench. She screamed, "You think I am the only one? There are others. Some even wear collars." Peace returned. The grave stopped whispering. Churches reopened, this time with less show, more power. Children laughed again. Waters Redeemed became a movement across nations. Caleb disappeared into the mountains, leaving a note. "When the trumpet sounds, I will return." Some say they still hear prayers echoing from the hills. Miriam wrote a book titled The Bride of Darkness. It became a bestseller. She used the funds to start Project Lightwave, helping abused girls. In the dedication, she wrote, "To the babies whose cries became my awakening, you saved me before I knew I was dying." One day, a new leader rose from hands on a woman possessed by a forgotten sea prince. He preached as with flames in his eyes and joy in his bones. "Tell Olokunzu he's young, tides are dry, but he carries the torch." Years passed. No more serpent dreams, no more whispering pulpits. But some nights, when the wind howls and candles flicker, the faithful whisper prayers just in case. In a hidden room beneath the old church, one final scroll remains locked in glass. It reads, "Beware the serpent who wears a smile, for he knows scriptures too." The end. Please subscribe, like, and share. Check my channel for other captivating contents like this. Don't forget to comment and turn on the notification as new ones are loading. Join my Telegram group for genuine connections. Get 4,000 watch time, views, and subscription as soon as possible. Telegram number in my description.